Trash mother! Trash mother!" the children mocked, as Adizay bent over the refuse dump, searching for scraps to feed her starving baby. Women spat as she passed. Men turned their faces away, and shame followed her like a shadow. But what no one knew was that the most powerful man in the village was watching. A wealthy chief with riches beyond measure, whose past was tied to this broken widow in a way no one could imagine. And when he finally stepped forward, what he did didn't just shock Adizay, it shook the entire village to its core. Welcome to African Kingdom Folktales, where every tale carries a lesson. Stay with me, because this story will tear at your heart, stir your spirit, and prove that the one you mock today may be the very one the gods bless tomorrow.
They said hunger makes no sound, but that morning in Umuwaka village, hunger wailed like a restless spirit. A baby's thin cry rose above the chatter of traders, above the haggling of women selling yams, and above the clanging of iron pots. It was the kind of cry that pricked the heart, yet most ignored it. At the back of the market, near the refuse dump where flies buzzed in thick clouds, a young mother bent low, her wrapper tied loose around her frail waist. She was searching among rotting vegetables and broken calabashes, desperate for anything that could pass as food for her starving child. Some villagers laughed in mockery. "Is this not Adazi, wife of the late Okonkwo?" one sneered. "Her husband was too lazy. Now see how she suffers." Others shook their heads but walked past, unwilling to be burdened. The widow's trembling hands picked a half-eaten corn cob from the dirt, her baby strapped on her back crying with hunger. She wiped the cob on her wrapper, whispered a prayer, and held it up as if it were gold. Little did she know that her act of desperation was being watched by the most powerful man in the village. And as the wealthy chief's eyes fixed on her, the air in the market shifted, as though ancestors themselves were listening. But what would he? Chief Obieze, the palm oil merchant who had risen from nothing to become one of the wealthiest men in the region, stood in silence. He was draped in fine Ankara, his walking stick polished with brass, his entourage of guards trailing him like shadows. The market usually trembled at his presence, traders bowing, children running to greet him. But today, his eyes were not on the people who hailed him. His gaze was locked on Adaeze and her child. A whisper stirred in his spirit. Memories flooded back. Days of his youth, when hunger had gnawed at his belly, when his late mother struggled to keep him alive. He remembered a kind hand that once fed him roasted yam by the roadside. His heart thumped. Could it be this very woman? Yet she looked so broken, so unrecognizable. His guards urged him to move on, but the chief did not. He watched her with a strange heaviness, as though destiny had set a trap before him. And in that moment, a question formed in his heart. Was this chance encounter a mere coincidence, or was it the ancestors calling him to remember?
By evening, the story of Adaze rummaging through refuse spread like wildfire. Children mocked her, chanting, "Trash mother, trash mother." Some women spat at her as she passed. Even relatives kept their doors shut, unwilling to share their meager food. Hunger became her companion, shame her blanket. But not everyone dismissed her. Old Mama Ninana, the blind storyteller of the village, sat under the udala tree and declared, "Mark my words. Those who laugh at this widow today will soon swallow their laughter like bitter cola." Her words drew laughter, for who could imagine Adaze rising from the dust? Far away, in his compound, Chief Obiaze sat restless. He could not eat. The widow's image haunted him. the way she dug through filth, her child crying on her back. And deep in his chest, something began to stir. A secret past, a forgotten debt, and a voice that refused to be silenced. He rose suddenly that night, startling his guards. "Prepare me a journey," he said. "I must seek the truth." But what truth was he searching for?
Under the pale moonlight, Chief Obies slipped away from his compound, leaving behind his riches and titles. He walked toward the old part of the village where memories slept. The crickets sang, the night air smelled of rain, and the chief felt like a boy again, hungry, barefoot, and lost. He remembered the day he almost fainted by the roadside, his body weak from starvation. A young woman, barely older than him, had given him food without asking his name. She had smiled, saying, "Eat, my brother. Tomorrow will be better." That act had been a seed planted in his heart, one that fueled his determination to rise above poverty. Now, decades later, he realized the truth. That woman was none other than Adeze, the widow mocked by all. His chest tightened. Could fate be weaving its web? Or had the ancestors planned this reunion to test his heart? The chief clenched his staff. "If the gods have brought her back to me," he whispered, "then I know what I must do." But what was he planning?
The next morning, Chief Obieze summoned the village elders for an emergency meeting at the palace square. The people whispered, wondering what grave matter called for such urgency. Some thought it was about land disputes, others about the upcoming Yam festival. None suspected the true reason. When the chief arrived, his voice thundered, "There is a sickness worse than fever in this village. It is the sickness of hardened hearts. Yesterday I saw with my own eyes a mother digging through rubbish to feed her child, while the rest of you mocked her. Have we lost all compassion?" The crowd shifted uneasily. No one dared speak. Then, with eyes blazing, he called Adeze forward. The widow staggered, clutching her child. Villagers gasped. What shame awaited her now? Would the chief banish her for bringing disgrace? But instead, Chief Obieze raised his staff high. "This woman once fed me when I was starving. Today, I will repay that debt." The square fell silent. The question hung in the air. How would he repay her?
What followed stunned the village. Chief Obieze declared before all, "From this day, Adeze is no longer homeless. I give her a house, a piece of land by the river, and enough food to sustain her and her child until harvest." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some fell to their knees, others whispered in disbelief. Adeze wept uncontrollably, her knees weak. For so long she had been the dust beneath people's feet, and now the chief had lifted her into honor. The same villagers who mocked her now stretched hands in false friendship. Children who once taunted her tried to touch her baby. But Chief Obieze was not finished. "Let this be a lesson," he thundered. "The one you mock today may be the one God blesses tomorrow. Never forget that kindness is a seed. It grows, even after many years." And as drums beat in celebration, Adeyezi's eyes lifted to the sky. But in the shadows, not everyone rejoiced. Envy was already stirring. Jealous tongues wagged. Some elders whispered, "Why give so much to a widow? Does she have charms over him?" Women who once mocked Adeyezi now spat behind her back, their envy sharper than knives. Even her late husband's relatives, who had abandoned her, crawled out of the woodwork, demanding a share. Adeyezi tried to rejoice, but her nights were restless. She felt eyes watching, footsteps following, and Chief Obieze, too, grew uneasy. Dreams troubled his sleep, visions of shadows trying to snatch the baby from Adeyezi's arms. Was the blessing meant to lift her, or had it awakened enemies who would not rest until they dragged her back into sorrow?
The celebration of Adeyeze's sudden lifting had barely ended before dark winds began to blow in Umuwaka. That night, as the villagers danced around her new home, a strange fire erupted in the nearby bush. The flames rose high, crackling like angry spirits, spreading dangerously close to her compound. People screamed and ran for water, but the fire only grew stronger. Some whispered, "This is no ordinary fire. The ancestors are angry. Chief Obieze has spoiled the balance by blessing the widow too much." Others accused Adeyeze of witchcraft. Only Mama Nena, the blind storyteller, remained calm. "Not every fire burns to destroy," she muttered. "Some fires come to test hearts." When dawn came, the fire died as suddenly as it had started, leaving no ashes, no destruction, only a ring of charred earth encircling Adeyeze's home like a sacred boundary. The villagers stood in awe. The chief's guards swore they saw shadowy figures dancing in the flames, protecting mother and child. But as the smoke cleared, one truth lingered in the air. Adeyeze's blessing had awakened forces, and the test of her destiny had only begun. No sooner had Adeyeze settled into her new life than her late husband's relatives returned, their eyes glinting with greed. They had once cast her out, refusing to feed her or shelter her. Now, seeing her sudden rise, they marched boldly into her compound. "Woman," her brother-in-law Uchenna barked, "this house is not yours alone. You are only a widow. Your husband's blood runs through us too. Hand over the land, or we will take it by force." Adeyeze trembled, clutching her baby. She tried to reason with them, reminding them of their cruelty when she begged for food, but they laughed in her face. Some villagers sided with the relatives, eager to share in her fortune. The tension grew until Chief Obieze himself stormed into the compound, his voice like thunder. "Leave this woman in peace," he roared. "She is under my protection." But the relatives only sneered, whispering that the chief's interest in a widow was suspicious. That night, as Adeyeze wept, a dream came to her. Her late husband appeared, warning her of betrayal yet to come. But from whom? Rumors are like smoke. They spread fast, clinging to every ear. Soon the market women whispered that Adeyeze had bewitched the chief, that she had tied his heart with charms. Men claimed the child she carried was not her late husband's, but a spirit child that brought wealth. Children avoided her baby, calling him the ghost boy. The weight of mockery returned, heavier than before. Adeyeze thought of running away, but where would she go? Each time she prayed, strange things happened. Her food multiplied, her baby stopped crying instantly. Rain fell only on her farm while others dried up. Was this a blessing or a curse? Meanwhile, Chief Obieze himself was troubled. The council of elders confronted him, warning him that his reputation was at stake. "If you do not cut ties with this widow, the people will turn against you." The chief's heart burned with conflict between loyalty to his people and a debt of gratitude he could never forget. And as the tension reached its peak, a mysterious stranger arrived in the village, carrying secrets that could either save Adeyeze or destroy her completely.
He came at dawn, walking with the staff of a traveler and the calmness of one who feared nothing. His hair was gray, his eyes deep, his steps slow but firm. He introduced himself as Izenia, a wandering seer. "I was led here by the ancestors," he said. The villagers, curious and suspicious, gathered by the river as Izenia spoke. He pointed at Adaeze. "This woman is chosen. Do not mock what you do not understand. She carries both sorrow and blessing in her womb. Her child will rise as a pillar for this land." Some villagers laughed, others trembled. Chief Obieze felt his chest tighten, for the words echoed his own dreams. Adaeze, however, was terrified. She wanted no prophecy, no destiny, only peace for her child. Izenia looked at her gently. "Daughter, you cannot run from what the gods have planted. But beware, the envy of men is more dangerous than hunger." And as he departed, leaving more questions than answers, a storm gathered over the village, and whispers of betrayal grew louder. One evening, when Adaeze returned from the stream, she found a basket of fresh fruits left at her doorstep. The villagers had grown hostile, so such a gift felt strange. Still, hunger pressed her, and she almost took a bite. But her baby cried violently, refusing the breast until she set the basket aside. Suspicious, she called Mama Nenena, who sniffed the fruit and frowned. "Poison," the old woman declared. "Someone wants you dead." Fear gripped Adaeze's heart. Who could it be? Her late husband's relatives? Jealous villagers? Or perhaps someone closer, someone hiding behind false kindness? Chief Obieze heard of the attempt on her life and vowed to uncover the culprit. But the elders warned him again, "Your protection of this widow will destroy you. Cut her off now." The chief refused. "If protecting the innocent brings me down, then let me fall with honor." His words carried strength, but they also painted a target on his back. And that very night, shadows crept into the village, plotting a strike that would shake the entire land. It was on a moonless night that the air in Umuwaka turned heavy, as if the spirits themselves held their breath. Adaeze was asleep, her baby curled against her chest, when the compound dogs began barking. Before she could rise, masked men stormed her hut, dragging her into the dust. The child wailed, his voice piercing the darkness. "They say you brought shame to this village," one growled. "Tonight we end it." They raised machetes, but before the blades could fall, a roar thundered through the night. Chief Obieze himself had arrived, his guards clashing with the masked attackers. Steel met steel, cries rang out, and blood stained the earth. In the chaos, Adaeze shielded her baby, whispering frantic prayers. Suddenly, the attackers fled into the shadows, leaving only silence behind. When Obieze's torch lit their masks, the villagers gasped. Behind the disguises were none other than Adaeze's own in-laws, led by Uchenna. The chief trembled with rage. "Your greed nearly killed this woman and child," he bellowed. The elders gathered, ashamed but powerless to defend the guilty men. But before punishment could be declared, a sudden clap of thunder shook the heavens, and a voice none could see cried out, "This matter is not for men alone. The ancestors demand judgment at dawn."
At sunrise, the entire village gathered by the sacred Iroko tree, where justice was sought in times of great dispute. The air smelled of palm wine and incense, and Ezenia the seer stood with the elders. Chief Obieze carried Adaeze and her child forward, while Uchenna and his men knelt, trembling. Ezenia lifted his staff. "Spirits of the land, see what men have done. Shall kindness be repaid with blood? Shall envy destroy the seed of hope?" The wind howled, branches swayed, and then all grew still. One by one, the guilty men confessed, their tongues loosened by unseen hands. Uchenna spat bitterness. "Yes, I wanted her dead. She is nothing, yet fortune smiles on her while I suffer." His words echoed across the crowd, heavy with shame. Suddenly, a whirlwind rose, circling Adaese's child. The people fell to the ground in fear. The voice of the ancestors boomed. "This child carries light for the land. Whoever lifts hand against him lifts hand against destiny." The whirlwind vanished, leaving silence. Uchenna and his men collapsed, struck dumb. The elders declared them banished, their lands given to Adaese as recompense. And as the people murmured in awe, Adaese realized her child was no ordinary boy. His life was tied to the future of the village itself. Weeks passed and peace returned to Umuwaka. Adaese's home became a place of refuge for widows, orphans, and the hungry. The same villagers who once mocked her now bowed their heads in respect. Children sang songs of her baby, calling him Obinkechi, meaning "my heart is with God." Chief Obiese, though still wealthy and powerful, grew quieter. He often sat under the udala tree, staring at the horizon. To those who asked why, he said, "I was rich in palm oil, but true wealth is in compassion. What I gave to Adaese was small. What she gave me was greater, a chance to honor the kindness that once saved me." Mama Nanena, the blind storyteller, summed it best one evening as the villagers gathered for tales. She said, "This story is not about riches or titles. It is about seeds. Every act of kindness is a seed, and though it may lie hidden in the soil for years, one day it will sprout. The one you mock today may be the one God blesses tomorrow." And so Adaese rose from dust to dignity, her child growing as a symbol of hope, and the village of Umuwaka learned a truth it would never forget. Wealth carries responsibility, compassion is strength, and destiny cannot be buried in the dirt. The drums rolled, the fire crackled, and the story ended as all folk tales do, with sorrow turned into joy and a lesson carved into the heart of every listener.
Don't forget to subscribe for more African Kingdom folktales.